So, stop comparing yourself to others and instead judge yourself against your own prior accomplishments. Are you better today than you were yesterday? Do you want to be better tomorrow than you were today? If the answer is yes, and it should be, then this is the secret to keeping yourself on the right track. Because when you compare your present to your past, you'll recognize that you're growing in the ways that are right for you at the speed that suits you best. You'll be able to acknowledge those small moments of growth that are critical in the development of your best self, and you'll be able to appreciate the unique facets of your life that make your progress specific to you. So, evaluate your personal progress only by the standards that are applicable to you. And as you take stock of your development, think of yourself as a home inspector. Just like a home inspector, you'll analyze everything from bottom to top, determining whether a problem is a cosmetic fix or a structural flaw. Make a list of everything you find that needs to be improved and then attack it, renovating yourself the same way you would a house. The best part is that when you're so focused on becoming the person you need to be, you won't have time to think about comparing yourself to others. Chapter 5: Raise a Kind and Responsible Child. The right way to raise our children is one of life's biggest quandaries, and it torments a lot of parents as they struggle to get it right. Because our children come into the world as blank slates, we're often paralyzed by the question of what to write on the people who will impact future generations. Niebauer suggests that the starting point for answering this question is to acknowledge innate human aggression. We all know how nasty kids can be to each other. Pretty much everyone has a bullying story from at least one point in their childhood. So, what if our primary concern was simply raising kind kids? Niebauer asserts that cultivating kindness requires more than being a friend to your child. In fact, successful parenting demands taking the risk that there may be times when your child doesn't like you. Although that might sting a little, take a moment to consider how this style of parenting would play out. After all, if you're focused on being your child's BFF, you're not focused on enforcing rules. Rather, your job is to ensure that they're only ever happy and having fun. And that's not going to help your child become a well-adjusted or likable adult. So, while it may not be fun to set boundaries and enforce them, it might help to remember that you're doing your child a great service by teaching them life lessons early on. After all, isn't it better for them to learn responsibility from a loving parent than from a society that will teach them in far less gentle ways? So, if you're eager to help your child become the best they can be, here are Niebauer's top tips for successful parenting. The first step is to avoid limiting the rules. While rules are absolutely necessary, if you have too many, your child will become frustrated and feel as though they're surrounded by obstacles. So, instead of controlling their lives down to the minutiae with rules like, your socks always have to match or you must always be in bed by this time, focus on practical, real-world rules like showing respect, being kind, and never using violence unless in self-defense. Remember that these rules will help shape your child's core values, and honestly, would you rather have a child who's loving and respectful or a little monster whose socks always match? The next rule is to always use the least amount of force necessary. So, make sure you set clear rules with equally clear consequences and take care to make the punishment fit the crime. Knowing which punishments will be most effective for helping your child learn the consequences of their actions also requires an in-depth knowledge of your child, so get to know the unique person they are and understand when only a verbal correction is necessary and when to take away video games for a week. The third tip is to stand as a united front. If you are a two-parent household, make sure you let your child know that they can't pit you two against each other to get their own way. Likewise, be sure to support your partner, even when they make mistakes. Lovingly acknowledging mistakes and working on them together is the key to growth and a happy home. Chapter 6: Life Isn't Fair. Why do bad things happen to good people is one of life's age-old, anguished mysteries, and to this day, we still haven't solved it. Often, that's because it's easier to blame injustice on others, whether that's on a global or personal scale. However, that's not the right response to the world's suffering, and neither is our temptation to give in to despair. Although both these reactions are tempting, eschewing extreme responses is crucial to curating a healthy lifestyle. The acclaimed Russian author Leo Tolstoy didn't see it that way, however. In fact, he suggested that the world's injustice was so overwhelming to the human mind that only 4 responses could be valid. By his definition, these responses were comprised of childlike ignorance, hedonistic pleasure, suicide, or determining to struggle on despite it all. But is that really all there is? Others certainly seem to have embraced this dismal worldview, as evidenced by multiple tragedies in which people decide to take other lives along with their own through mass school shootings. As of June 2016, statistics show that there had been over 1,000 shootings in the United States over the preceding 1,260 days of the year. In each of these cases, the shooter had killed 4 or more people before ending their own lives. But while this is very bleak news indeed, it shouldn't cause us to give up hope or conclude that humanity is inherently bad. That lesson comprises Peterson's 6th rule for living, which invites people to take responsibility for their own lives and actions before condemning the world. Drawing on the philosophy of Russian writer Alexander Solzhenitsyn, Peterson asserts that it's possible to reject the cruelty of life even when you've seen it firsthand. That's what Solzhenitsyn learned when, after a dedicated fight against the Nazis during World War II, he was imprisoned by his own state following the conclusion of the war. You might think life in a Russian gulag would be as bad as things could get, but for Solzhenitsyn, it actually got worse. While serving his sentence, he also found out that he had cancer. However, despite it all, Solzhenitsyn resisted the temptation to become angry and bitter. Preferring instead to focus on the good in humanity, he spent his time in prison seeking opportunities to contribute something meaningful in the time he had left. That mission included authoring the book The Gulag Archipelago, a scathing expose of Soviet internment camps. Not only did this book give Solzhenitsyn added purpose in life, it also played a vital role in demolishing public support for Stalin's brand of communism. Chapter 7. Seek Sacrifice Over Instant Gratification. Have you ever heard the story about the monkey who got his hand caught in the cookie jar? Although his hand could fit into the jar, it was too big for him to slip it back out while also holding a cookie. Because of this, the monkey was forced to choose between giving up and freeing himself from his predicament or holding onto his treat. The story ends with the monkey being captured by hunters, with the moral suggesting that greed is a trap which ensnares us. Chances are, you've probably witnessed similar behavior in human beings. The temptation to pursue what we want even when it will lead to negative consequences is a pretty universal human experience. But giving in to that desire doesn't really make us better people, does it? Unfortunately, this life lesson is connected to our previous chapter because unhealthy choices are often side effects of despair. If we view the world as bleak and miserable, we naturally seek to alleviate our depression by pursuing any pleasure that will make our existence more bearable. This often leads to the justification that something can't be wrong if it makes us happy, and that type of rationalization can be a gateway to very bad decisions. So, how can we combat this? Peterson suggests our best recourse is to pursue sacrifice over instant gratification. That's because sacrifice puts better things into the future through relinquishing instant pleasure in the present. And we sort of know that already. After all, we sacrifice things we'd rather be doing to go to work every day and earn a living. But that type of sacrifice is still in the interest of personal gain because we do it to facilitate our own survival or save for the promise of a vacation later on. However, Peterson argues that true sacrifice, the type we need to pursue in order to become kinder, happier, and more well-adjusted people, is defined by the things we do for others. So, instead of pursuing selfish, instant pleasures, consider giving up a bit of your time to volunteer and make a difference in someone else's life. When you concentrate on the good you can put into the world, you take a break from your negative worldview and allow yourself to be driven by positive influences.